Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro. Today we're drinking 1792 store picks. What's up everybody? Kyle the Drink Pro here with you yet again. As always, thank you for joining me. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Today we're doing a little bit more of a self-indulgent video, I have to admit. I really have been interested in drinking some more products from Barton, which is a distillery owned by Sazerac, who also owns Buffalo Trace. I cover a lot of those things in a previous video, almost 2 years ago now, April 2020. Man, that seems like a lifetime ago, but I will put the video, where? Up here? Up here? Somewhere up here. Wherever it goes, I will be sure to include a link so you can check out my review of the 1792 Full Proof Store Pick from the Rural Inn. That was Rural Inn number 5, by the way. They do a lot of picks over there. You should check them out. Go talk to Vince, go talk to Ray, and tell them I sent you. Today we are doing even more store picks of 1792. I've got the Bottled and Bond, that's 100 proof store pick of 1792 from the Payless liquor store. Shout out to Liz. And I've got a 1792 store pick of the Full Proof. This is from Vine and Table. Shout out to Joseph. If you haven't noticed, learning who's at the liquor stores regularly, who are the managers, who makes sure the liquor goes to the people they want the liquor to go to is really important if you're going to be trying to build a whiskey collection, or a collection of any spirit, in fact. And one of the things I will definitely recommend is if you're trying to grow your collection, don't just go there for one kind of spirit. Don't just go there asking for Pappy and Blanton's and bullshit like that. Drink some store picks. Ask them about their regular daily sippers. Ask them about spirits in other categories. One of the things I've been really trying to do is expand my palate beyond whiskey. I enjoy a lot of other spirits. I want to make more content about them. I want to learn more about them. And let me tell you, people that work in liquor stores are interested in talking about those things because all they hear day in and day out from whiskey drinkers is, y'all got any Blantons? No. Now, I wanted to spend some time in this video talking more about the 1792 brand and about Barton generally. Their website does not make that easy. I could have done a lot more digging and really tried to find some unique information out there from one-off websites and blogs, but I like to just kind of focus at least initially on the information provided on the website. The 1792 website, which is separate from the Barton Distillery website, is all flash and no substance. They don't talk about the brand at all. They mention it's a high rye bourbon, but that's about it. It really doesn't feel like the website of a serious whiskey company, which is really disappointing. One thing I was able to pick up is that the Barton Distillery was founded in 1879, and it's the oldest fully operational distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky. What fully operational means, I have no fucking idea. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get into drinking some of this whiskey. Now, I'm starting with the 1792 Bottled and Bond for two reasons. First, because it's lower proof, and second, because it's something I've had more of, and this is my first pour of the night, so I want something I'm accustomed to, I want something I'm comfortable with, something that will feel familiar but will also be an interesting experience. You don't want to start with something high proof and then work your way backwards because you'll lose out on the nuance here if you burn your palate up here. Now, what's interesting to me is, this bottle has gotten to half full maybe in about a 2-week span, so obviously I've been hitting it hard. But the nose for me has like a candy corn quality, but it's almost got a sourness now that I don't remember being there before. Like a sour apple kind of vibe. I can't think of any green apple liqueur, but that's where I'm going on the nose. And it's very sugary sweet. The corn is very prominent on this. Still definitely getting like caramel corn and maybe like unripe cherries. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep things this way. If you got any thoughts about how I should set up this, set, leave a comment below. Let me know what I should do because I'm not quite satisfied with it, but I don't know what I need to change. The more I keep smelling it, the cinnamon starts to show up. More and more, I'm getting almost like a black tea and an oak. Now remember, the thing with store picks is some are very on profile, some are very off profile. And for me, this has a lot of typical Barton notes, but it also is bringing in a little bit more herbalness and a little bit more of a high, almost citrusy sweet fruit. I don't get a lot of that typically with other Barton pours. It's almost like it's added more bass and treble, and the sort of mids are getting maybe even lost in the mix. All right, let's give it a taste. Wow, that has opened up in a way I honestly don't particularly care for. It's not to say it's a bad whiskey. It's just to say that the first third of this bottle was my favorite third. It was much sweeter, had a fruitiness that was really prominent that I like. I'm a sucker for a fruity sweet whiskey. Now it's become a lot more cinnamon apple baking spice vibe. Yeah, the sweet apple is still in there, that almost like green apple or candy apple, but it's much more subtle. The oak is becoming way more prominent on the palate. Long black pepper finish, lots of oak on the finish, more of like almost a charred oak, or at the very least a wet, almost bogged down oak. Yeah, and this herbal bitterness starts to show up earlier. I knew there was some bitterness and some herbal quality on this pour when I first popped the bottle and for the first couple of weeks of drinking it, but it was predominantly on the finish late in the pour. Now that herbal bitterness, almost like herb saint or something like that, one of those herbal liqueurs, if you can imagine those without the anise flavor, that's kind of where it's going. It's a very Aperol bitterness, and not really my go-to for a bourbon, but it's got a lot of other good things going on. It's just, I feel like I've lost my favorite part of it, which is really unfortunate. One of the things that can really influence your palate is what you've had before you try a whiskey. I will admit that before I tried this whiskey, about an hour before, I had some chocolate. And I'm wondering if the chocolate is messing with my palate here. I might be getting less sweetness because of the sweet candy flavor, the chocolate sweetness from before, and that chocolatey note might be bringing out some of the bitter qualities in this pour. So this may be a situation where the pour isn't hitting me right because of what I've had prior. We will revisit this pour after we go to the full proof and see if a little bit of time away from it opens it up. We'll also leave the cap off of them. I've been using these nice little caps. Yeah, Viking shit. And this is the full proof from Vine and Table. Both of these bottles, by the way, I picked up on their release date. They both sold out relatively quickly. It's just part of the nature of whiskey right now, is things sell out much more quickly than they used to. That's why knowing people, that's why paying attention and staying plugged into the whiskey world is really valuable. You're not going to get your hands on super rare stuff anymore. I mean, you're just not, unless you know somebody or you win the lottery. I've actually gotten pretty lucky with lotteries, thankfully. Ooh, now this is very different. If you, wow, if you gave me these both and you asked if they were from the same distillery, I might not think they were. That sour apple on the bottom, it's honestly, I think the reason this thing's half gone is that drew me in. It's so unique and really delicious. This Foolproof 1792, the nose is straight up cinnamon, like Red Hots. You know what's kind of crazy is that the nose on this Foolproof, this 115, proof whiskey, is actually more muted than this 100 proof. That citrus, that sweetness, there's more prominence on the nose for the bottled and bond. That really surprises me. But it definitely smells like a whiskey older than I know it is. Bourbons that I've smelled that have this kind of deep, rich, chocolatey, woody, very earthy tone. These tend to be, in my experience, older, 12, 15-year bourbon. Maybe some 10-year sneak in there, but I think this is in the 8-year range, so this actually has quite a deep richness for a whiskey of its age. But it doesn't have as much of the sweetness. It doesn't have as much of the sweetness. There's not a lot of those fruity flavors, not a lot of that citrusy brightness that I was getting from the bottled and bond. And that may be a function of the proof point, but it may also be a function of just the pick, what you're looking for from your barrel. The Full Proof's a pretty straightforward nose. There's not a lot of notes, not a lot of complexity coming out of it, but let's see how it tastes. Now you can definitely tell that this is higher proof. Has a lot more alcohol sting on the palate. But it actually feels very dense. Let me taste it again. I may add water to this, which is not something I typically do, much to the chagrin of some viewers, but I may add water to this to open it up because I'm really surprised how dense it feels. Yeah, there's like nothing to it. I mean, it's sweet up front, very soft, very gentle, slight nuttiness in the mid-palate, macadamia nut kind of thing in the mid-palate. That cinnamon and pepper are kind of throughout. They're good, but they're throughout the pour. Lots of black pepper on the finish. Not nearly as oaky as the Bottled & Bond, which is really surprising. It's a very straightforward bourbon profile. It's like classic, prototypical bourbon. If you said to somebody, what's a high-proof bourbon supposed to taste like? That's pretty close. But let's go ahead and add a couple drops of water. I don't have any water, so I gotta run and get some. Yes, I literally have a handful of water. That's good enough. I plan these videos, I'm sure I do. Now, I probably added 5 or 6 drops of water. You don't necessarily need a lot if you're not trying to change the proof. A few drops should really be able to open up a whiskey if that's all you're trying to do. And it's, 115 proof. If you get up in the 130, 140, you may need more. But at this proof point, just a few drops should open it up. I'm definitely starting to get apple pie. But it's not nearly as citrusy or sharp as the Bottled & Bond from Payless. The Vine and Table has got a more red apple kind of vibe, like Red Delicious. Ooh, I'm getting some nutmeg and ginger on this. You know what? Maybe a little allspice. Very, very baking spice forward with a few drops in the water. In the whiskey. A few drops of water in the whiskey. Adding water to it didn't make it better for my palate. It brought out a lot of bitterness from the oak. It dulled some of the sweetness, which I was liking. It added more black pepper. The black pepper on this is super prominent. So I really feel like this is meant to be drank at 115 proof. I don't know what the logic was going into this pick. I did not join the group on this pick, but I can't help but wonder if this was picked to be on profile because it does have such a classic bourbon taste. It's high proof, but it drinks much lower than it is. You get a lot of that classic oak. You get the classic black pepper, slight nuttiness, sweetness up front. This is not going to blow your mind. It's not a shocking pour, but it's really kind of right down the middle, perfect strike if you're using a baseball metaphor. It's not going to be flashy, but it gets the job done very well. Let's go back to the Bottled & Bond, which is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. This was kind of all over the place, but it may have gone all over the place in a bad way after being all over the place in a good way. Oh man, yeah, okay. So the chocolate was definitely doing something to it. This thing is now super fruity, and that sourness is totally gone. Big time caramel apple, strawberry, banana, a little bit of orange. And that's the fun of doing single barrel selections and the fun of drinking single barrel products. You get to learn the profiles that stores typically pick, that the people that go with those stores typically pick. And then you can make informed decisions. I am getting some cinnamon on this, but it's very light. Creamy creme brulee and tons of fruit. Let's taste it. It is still a lot less sweet than I wanted it to be. Overall, I think that the 1792 products typically are not quite as sweet as I would like them to be based on the other elements of their profile. I haven't had a ton of 1792 products, but a lot of the ones I have had, they smell like fruitiness or like sweet baking spice, and the palate has very little of that sweetness. It comes in soft and gentle, and then it immediately moves to nutty and oaky. I do get more of the fruitiness on the Bottled & Bond. And the Bottled & Bond does have a lot more sweetness in the mid-palate. I think on the whole, this is a great example of how single barrels can differ. Now, I recognize these are different proof points, but really what I'm noticing is a totally different flavor profile, which is not something you would expect between just going Bottled & Bond to full proof. You'd expect it to be higher proof, a little more punch. It definitely has that. But it also is really focused on cinnamon, on oak, on black pepper, whereas the Bottled & Bond, once I gave it some time to breathe, really focused on this sort of sweet honey nut fruitiness. And that dichotomy is kind of fun. You know what? What the hell? Let's mix them together and see what happens. Ooh. That might be my favorite yet. That really gives you the best of both worlds. Huh. Alright guys, well I'm going to get out of here and go enjoy my new creation. you all keep drinking like professionals. And by the way, if you haven't joined my Patreon, please consider doing it. Tons of cool videos over there that are exclusive, tons of opportunities to win bottles, to win samples, to drink things along with me. It should be a good time. So you keep drinking like professionals. See you later.